Wendy Willoughby has strong ties to Nevada County, 4 generations strong. Her career has spanned television, theater, and nonprofits. Wendy, who wrote the Every Student Belongs resolution, was one of 2 board trustees who voted yes, and we want to welcome Wendy for coming to the studio and helping us understand your position, your point of view, how this all started. So let's just start with, how did you feel, why did you feel compelled to write this resolution? And could you give us a little backstory?
Sure. Well, I think the whole country was watching with bated breath as the administration, the current administration, began to send out executive orders, those which seemed quite probable to harm our students and communities, frankly. As those were unrolling, we as a board and our district were being advised to sort of wait and see as things progressed.
Advised by whom?
Well, by our conversations with one another, our superintendent, what the superintendent is hearing from places like CSBA, which is the School Board Association of California, various law firms that help school districts, et cetera. As you can imagine, in any kind of a large system, there are lots of folks who people, boots on the ground, look to for that kind of advice. And so we were sort of in a holding pattern, if you will. And then Spencer, who I believe...
Gillespie,
yes,
right?
Yes. Spencer came to our March board meeting and spoke in the non-agendized public comment. So this is a place where public can come and speak to the board about anything, that it doesn't necessarily have to be on the agenda. And in a nutshell, what he said was, hey, board members, we have heard from our administrators, our staff, other supporters inside of our districts and our schools, that we understand this is a very scary time for students, particularly students who have already experienced and are continuing to experience harassment and bullying and othering. And we got you. And what he said to us was, well, we haven't heard from you guys. And so for me, that was sort of the straw, if you will.
Hit you.
Yeah, that, okay, I'm sort of done waiting. Not sort of, I am done waiting. And so I let Superintendent Frisella know that it was my intention to bring a resolution around student belonging to the April board meeting. So that was the driver of how that came about. But may I also say that in the creation of that resolution, my intention, knowing that there was potential concern based on other conversations and comments made by my fellow trustees, that anything that felt really pointed could potentially make the resolution not adoptable. And so I set out to create language and words that felt much broader and more declarative in nature, as I'm sure has been pointed out, and maybe folks are not aware, but we do already have education code, board policies,
Title VI,
laws in place, right, that already guarantee these things for our students. So really it was about the pieces of the resolution that you wrote, right? We got you, is what we're trying to say to these kids.
So rather than addressing or writing this from the perspective of it being a protest document, you wrote it from the perspective of it being a solidarity in support of the student body.
That's a great way to put it, Lynn, yes.
God, interesting. So I think that, I know that one of the points that made the trustees who voted no on the resolution was that it was submitted very close to the deadline when agenda items are accepted for a board meeting. And at least Andrew Klein said to me on this show that he didn't feel he had enough time to really digest and to give it proper consideration, and he was uncomfortable with other pieces that we can get into in a moment.
Sure.
But as far as submitting it, pretty close to the deadline, I think that has been one of the criticisms. What do you say to that?
Well, the way that our process works presently, and I can only speak to our district's process, is each trustee has a one-on-one meeting with our superintendent. We don't actually see the full agenda and all of the things attached until it is released on Friday evening. Often, if there are things...
For a Wednesday meeting, for
correct,
a following Wednesday.
Friday evening
right.
for a Wednesday meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and things can change up to the last minute. We try, right? The hope is to have it so we're not pressing our executive staff to get that out. But in fact, many times there are things we do not see until the agenda is released to the public on Friday evening. And I understand that President Klein would like to have more time. However, I feel I should push back a little bit. This is a document that is barely a page and a half.
Okay.
And the documents that would need to be compared to it or reconciled to it
right.
that he's talking about. So that's the Dear Colleague letter.
February 14th from the Federal Department of Education.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Which was more of in reading it, it seemed to me more of a, it was threatening but not directive. So it was a very kind of wishy-washy, you got mixed messages.
Correct. And they're telling you to abide by the law, but we're already abiding by the law.
Right.
So what exactly are you talking about?
Sure.
So my understanding is that there would have been a desire to have more time to directly compare the words in the resolution with the directives from both that February 14th letter, and I believe there was that also just happened on Friday.
Right.
That Friday
White
morning.
House clarification.
Yes, the clarification document and the request for signing a certification that
by each state.
Correct, by each state.
Right.
And so again, that speaks to the fact that school districts in every state are sort of beholden to their state. And any compliance we have with regard to dollars given to us through our efforts around our existing law, Title VI, as you mentioned, we already, every year, and have to give that compliance, answer those questions, show the things we're doing to be able to receive those federal dollars. So we're already doing all of the things that the federal government is asking. And we do that through our state. Those things are given to our state, and then the state then gives them to the feds. We do not report directly to the feds, as
right.
far as I'm aware.
Right.
And so what I guess I would have hoped for, and what I hope for in the future, is if that is truly the issue, then let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Well, we interviewed Mr. Klein a little while ago, and I think his biggest discomfort is the word. His biggest discomfort was around this fiscal issue and the threat that 4% of the budget could be withheld by the feds if DEI type language and positions were not eliminated from official documents and considerations by the district. So as far as his Klein's his fiduciary responsibility is what he mainly, you've talked to him, I'm sure. I'm not
yes.
telling anything you don't know.
Yes.
Was his main concern. What do you say about you just mentioned that you do not get funds directly from the feds, but from the state.
Right.
But,
well, no, we do get funds directly from the feds, but we don't report directly to the feds, is my understanding. And I hope Mr. Frisella will call me out if I'm not correct on that.
Right.
But that our compliance and doing what we need to do in order to be eligible for those dollars, that is already happening.
Sort of like, I said this in the last interview, it's sort of like, you got Fed daddy and state mommy, and mommy and daddy are giving the kid different,
right.
different direction and instructions.
Right, and so that is another argument that's been leaned into, that the interpretation of both of these directives from mom and dad, as you put it, are different, and therefore that needs to be, play out in the courts, et cetera.
Okay. And it is being
and
played
it
out.
is, and it already has. And so one of the, one of the statements that was made during that board meeting was that we didn't have guidance from our state yet. Well, we do now. And that we didn't have any legal opinion, we do now. We also have the kids put forth a petition at the same time as the walkout was scheduled that has almost 1,000 signatures on it. So I wonder, with many of these concerns that were stated at the board meeting being met, are the concerns still the same, or are we changing?
Have the concerns been addressed?
Have the concerns been addressed
Right.
enough to reconsider doing right by our students, being in solidarity with our students? And I think it's a false equivalent to say that we can't do both. Right? That it either has to be, we risk 4% of our budget, which is pretty small when we have a fairly healthy reserve, versus making our students, which is our goal, right, to create a safe place where kids feel they belong, because the data shows us, anecdotal stories tell us, as you mentioned from Miss Rivers, these are the things that help kids learn.
So let's turn this just a little bit, because the resolution is a statement of solidarity, but it doesn't resolve or address the issues that are being spoken about in the resolution. So clearly this came from somewhere. There are some concerns about safety and bullying and so on and so forth at the schools. What's the next step? I hear, if I hear what you're saying, you'd like to see this resolution reintroduced at a board meeting coming up. I know the next one is May 14th.
Yes.
I'm assuming there might be some action around this at that meeting. But I mean, the bigger issue is, from my perspective, the bigger issue is, what do we do about these issues that are surfacing at the schools? And that, I'm assuming, will also be on the agenda at some point to, evolve some programs, develop some programs that address these issues.
Yeah, and so, Lynn, thank you for the question. We have programs that are in place that are addressing these things. We have trainings that are happening for our administrators, and we are working toward adding more training, what is often referred to as, or I would like to see us working toward adding more training so that teachers, both teachers and students, understand how to intervene when they see an incident. Many times students will share that an incident happens and they don't know what to do.
Yes.
Right? We do
I
have,
wouldn't necessarily know what to do.
And how to do it in a safe way that is protecting the victim in whatever the circumstance is. And so these are all things that I personally have been working towards since I was elected in 2022. These are the things that are being told to us by the current administration that we are not to engage in. And so I believe that there is it feels as though there's a cross purpose here. And I know that President Klein stated multiple times during the board meeting that the no vote, I'm assuming he's speaking to his no vote, was not about ideology. I beg to disagree. That is exactly what it's about.
Tell me more.
If we have a declarative statement that is set to create solidarity so that the children, the kids, and some of these kids are actually adults, right? They're 18, some of these seniors, to show them that there are grown-ups in the room that actually care, that understand that there are students out there that are struggling, that there are students that feel as though they are set outside, that are othered, that don't feel they belong.
Right.
And anyone worth their salt who has any education is familiar with Maslow's hierarchy.
Right.
If these kids are not fed, are not clothed, do not feel safe, I mean, if you want to focus on test scores, where should we put our dollars? Where should we put our energy? On making kids feel safe and that they belong, so they can focus not on where, what hall they're going to walk into, what bathroom they're going to go to, but the test that's in front of them, asking their teacher the question about the math problem they don't understand, right? Feeling like they can be in solidarity with the rest of the students on the campus.
Is it possible that, it feels like there's a lot of good people with good intentions, with a different perspective. I wonder, is there a possibility that you can, take it out in the hallway with Mr. Gillespie, Spencer Gillespie, and Andrew Klein and yourself, and sort of come to some kind of a compromise to reintroduce a resolution that everybody's comfortable with?
I think that would be a fantastic idea, Lynn. Of course, what's challenging about being an elected official in California is we have the Brown Act, right? And the Brown Act prevents, for those who may not know, prevents more than 2 elected officials speaking about any specific topic that will be agendized. The idea is that we are public servants and our work needs to happen in public.
Right. No, I get that. You're smart people, but I bet you could all figure that out.
I think we probably could. And I hope that is something that President Klein is thinking about. I know that it is something that I am thinking about. We are seeing through our email and other channels, a real good number of folks requesting that there be continued work on something, that we pass something that shows, the board's solidarity with the kids they serve.
I cannot wait to see how this, resolves. And
you and me both.
Because this obviously needs to be moved forward.
Yes.
And it can't stay where it is. We have to move
forward.
Yes,
and, I know it was stated by President Klein. I cannot recall if the other trustees stated this in the meeting, but that, this kind of wait and see idea that we could bring it back and take another look at it. And again, I point out that many of the concerns that were brought up in mid-April have now been, at least to a certain extent, addressed.
Because things are moving so quickly.
It's, yes, not quickly enough and then too quickly.
Right.
As bureaucracy tends to do.
Yeah.
And courts tend to do. But that, if there can be a conversation about both and, of course, I am not suggesting that we do anything that put ourselves at risk. But I think we're all smart people and we can look at and address the actual risk based on who we have and what has been told to us as far as protections.
Right.
And the amount of time it will probably take for any sort of action with a group of people in power that have no mechanism to actually do what they're saying.
Right, a letter is not
it truly
enforcement.
Is a threat. It is not a law. It is not a mandate. It is none of those things. And so if that is the case, how can we talk about what we can do? How can we talk about if in some crazy world, we live in one now, there was a discovered mechanism to remove that 4% funding, do we have a backup plan? And what do those 3 trustees need to make them feel comfortable to support the students?
So rather than approaching it from a no perspective, you'd like to see them approach it from, let's figure this out and massage this to fit.
And that is truly our job, right? We are elected from various parts of the county, and it is our job to come together as one unit to work these things out. And I think the public expects that we work them out in public, as we should. They need to know what we're thinking, where our values are, what's important to us. And my understanding from the many kids I've spoken to, from the many groups I've spoken to at Nevada Union specifically, this feeling of the grown-ups don't get it. The grown-ups don't see. The grown-ups aren't listening. Well, I would like to say that our kids are watching us. The future is watching us. History is watching us. And I really hope we can find a way to the right thing.
Well, I hope we can have you back.
Absolutely.
With good news about a resolution in the near future. And to repeat that the next board meeting is on May 14th?
Yes, starts at 6. Open session starts at 6 p.m.
All right. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Please come back. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. I will.
All right. Thank you.